Okay, hi everyone, it's Alice at Welldoing. I'm here with Leigh Timmis and Ajay Khandelwal to talk about endurance sports, mindset, what it takes to, succeed in enormous challenges physically and psychologically. So Leigh, you've written a book about your world record. I was going to say attempt, but your world record because you succeeded cycling the fastest across Europe. It's called The Race of Truth. Ajay has it very
Whoa, great
handily.
advertising. Great. Yeah. Speak to
So
my agent, Ajay. He's right there.
exactly, perfect. But so what, and Ajay, you as a psychotherapist, you dabble in endurance events. You've done a 333-kilometer cycle, I think you said, an ultra marathon, these kind of things. So I want to start us off with Ajay, you probably come to it from like what it might take psychologically anyway because of the work you do as a therapist. But Leigh, you seemed super surprised about the emphasis on like the psychological component, the preparation, why there was a psychologist in your team. That seemed to surprise you in terms of helping you reach the finish line. So I was wondering what you both made of that.
Yeah. Would you like me to go first? Yeah, great. So for me, I always thought the mind was separate to the body. And now I guess it's something that we'll go into a lot in this conversation. They are so integral to each other. They both impact each other. Well, we are one human being, aren't we? And I only realized that through the world records. So my own background, kind of came from mental health originally, but everything that I achieved had sort of been an escape from it. I struggled with anxiety and depression when I left university. I became a self-employed filmmaker and just kind of dug myself into a bit of a rut that I think a lot of people going straight into self-employment might do. Really worked very hard towards this idea of success that wasn't my idea of success, and neglected a lot of stuff that was important to me. And I ended up kind of escaping that through an opportunity. I got a chance to go to Iceland on a motorbike for a month with two guys I worked with, and it was amazing. And I saw this amazing world out there, and travel was this incredible thing that I could do. And I completely changed my life from something that wasn't working for me to going out and seeing the world. And it was powered by these strong legs. I guess in a way, I used those strong legs to escape this troubled mind. And I thought, if you could do that, then you'll come back from that, and I'll be like my heroes. I'll be like the people who sailed across oceans or climbed the highest mountains. In my mind, how could normal life ever phase you if you were capable of doing that? But I came back from riding around the world. It took 7 years. And I realized that actually the world had changed and I hadn't. When I was still confronted with responsibilities and pressures and relationships, I was still the same person, reacting in that same way, being overwhelmed. Looked for another challenge. What's bigger than going around the world? I thought a world record. And again, I was going to use those strong legs to escape a troubled mind. So the sport had always kind of been the escape.
Mm.
But I took on a team of scientists for this, multidisciplinary, across physiology, psychology, nutrition, and physiotherapy. And I thought that's what I didn't know, that I needed the psychologist. So I went to a coach at the university, turns out to be one of the most well-respected physiologists in the UK, absolutely amazing. And he was saying, so who's on your team? And I was like, oh yeah, a nutritionist, because I need to cook the right foods and be healthy, and a physiotherapist, because if I'm working hard, I need to make sure that my muscles are in good condition. And he was like, so who's your psychologist? I was like, nonsense. I don't need any of that. I'm not going to be falling in love out there. It's just me and strong legs, strong lungs. That's what you need. And in that session, he told me a line that will stick with me forever. And I really don't think it's just about cycling. He told me, you could be the fastest cyclist in the world on the start line, but it means nothing unless your mind is strong enough to get you to the finish line. And for me, that's any challenge. Like whenever someone takes on a challenge, you're going to get to those difficult bits. If it's worthwhile doing, you've got to find a way through it. And that's what really came out of this project. So the biggest changes in me, I already had the capacity physically to do the world record, but it was developing my mind to get me to the finish line, which was the biggest learning curve. It was the biggest surprise. Like I said, kind of for years, I just thought this mind was something I could leave behind, but actually it was integral to getting the result that I needed on that world record. So it was a huge learning curve.
I love that you gave the example of falling in love as a massive psychological roadblock. That's fair enough.
Yeah, I don't know. I wonder if that's what is my experience. I guess, my experience of psychology before doing the world record was counseling. So I did go to counseling when I was struggling with my mental health in my mid-20s. And there's some interesting differences, some comparisons to make. I quite liked it in that it gave me an opportunity to talk. Like that was my first introduction. So being a guy in his mid-20s, this was a long time ago, mid-2000s, so nearly 20 years ago. There was a lot of stigma around it. I would never have spoken to my friends or family about mental health, about depression. And to go to a counselor and just start talking about it was quite, it kind of removed a weight off my shoulders, like a burden was taken away, and it was something I'd never done before. And it was nice that the world didn't end. That was like what I got from it. And it is strange that I mentioned love. I guess that love and relationships and work and stresses and pressures, they would have been the things that I associated with psychology. I would never have thought a sports person would need it. I kind of, when I looked at psychology before, and this is no offense, I'm really sorry for my initial thoughts, but just kind of thought like a motivational quote sort of cheerleader standing at the side of a football pitch going, I don't know, like, dig deeper, you can do this. But it's not at all, is it? Like, there's so much work that goes into behind the scenes of hooking onto something that's so personal and so important to you and building interventions on top of it that will get you through situations. And if you're lucky, there will be a trigger line when you're hitting rock bottom, when everything's going wrong, you can remember what it is that you're in there for. You can remember something that motivates you. But it's all the work behind the scenes to get to that point that's so important.
Mm. Yeah, the idea of the motivation, the why is really interesting. I think I'm intrigued by massive endurance events, but I do have this idea that like what is driving people to do something like that? Can it ever be like a holistically healthy motivator, or is there always something kind of gritty in there that encourages people to really want to push themselves like that?
I think that there is something in everybody who is trying to pursue excellence or success, or what is driving somebody? What are they trying to prove? I think that's what it came down to for me. I feel like for a long time, I tried to live up to society's expectations, that I could be better than, I don't know, what was expected of me, or I could be better than everybody else, maybe getting that first class degree that proves that you're better, and there seems to be a push towards that. Everyone wants to look perfect on social media, don't they? You don't show the reality. But I think digging deeper, I think that when I was a kid, I always wanted to maybe try and impress my dad, but I felt like nothing that I did was ever good enough. I think there's an element in there of that. And it's nothing against my dad. All parents bring their kids up the best way that they can. But I think there was an element of, constantly chasing to try and prove myself. And it just became bigger than the dad thing. It became my life in a way. And in writing the book, actually, I got to look back on a lot of the times that I've done that and the compromises that I've made in my life in order to achieve these great things. And the cost, there's quite a cost that comes with it, actually. I realized, so it's quite a difficult time writing the book. I sat down through lockdown when everyone had to self-isolate. It seems like a lifetime ago now, doesn't it? But I was living alone, and I was like, actually, this time I'm going to sit down, I'm going to write this book. And there was an opportunity for me to move in with my girlfriend at the time, but I was like, oh, if I do that, it'll be a distraction. I won't get on with my work. It was the same kind of thing again, sacrificing friendships and relationships in pursuit of something that was a greater success. And in that time through lockdown, I looked back at having pursued the first class degree. And I'd had an amazing conversation with somebody who asked, oh, when you went to university, what did you do it for? And I was like, well, to get a good degree so I could have a great life, to pursue success. Why did you go to university? And she said, for the life experience. And it suddenly clicked. I was like, I worked so hard towards that certificate and potentially missed the fun of the 3 years. And then pursuing the world record, to be honest, in that first world record, the 2018, that the Race of Truth is based on, I was focused on getting the best result. And although I learned a lot of psychology, I wouldn't say that I absorbed it and became it. From a background of kind of engineering, I kind of assumed that there was a problem and that has a solution. But psychology is not like that. It's about creating small routines. And when they're repeated often enough, you become it. And the time that I spent breaking the record or preparing for the record wasn't long enough. And I didn't become grateful for those moments that I got to go through. I was constantly pursuing the end result. And I think that's a change in me now. Anyway, yeah, so through writing the book, I kind of realized that. And writing the book's actually changed me a bit. I feel like I've addressed a lot of it. Yeah. I feel like I'd like to do another challenge and not put that pressure of having to prove something to other people. I'd like to just try and do something really for me. And I think that's an easy thing to say, but it's quite a difficult thing to do. Yeah. I'd like to pass that over to Ajay as well, because
I'm curious too.
Well, Leigh, I'm speaking as a fan, because I kind of, I've read this book, and you're my hero now. I read this book, and I thought I'm going to be meeting Leigh Timmis. So since I read the book, actually, I read this book on a flight to LA, and I remember getting up the next day at 6 a.m. and I meant to go out for a small jog, but I had my inner Leigh Timmis activated, and I carried on a lot further than I planned. I went AWOL for about 3 hours. I was across the Golden Gate Bridge, and I was just moved by the book. I found it a very profound book, because I felt it was very honest. And one of the questions, as you were speaking, I was thinking about your interval sessions. I thought, I can't do interval sessions. I can't suffer, but you can. How did you do that? How did you do those interval sessions?
That's really interesting. And the interval sessions came before I even started doing psychology. There's the bit in the book that, the story is that moment when I went to see the physiologist, and we were talking about the team and who's your psychologist. I was like, no, I don't need that. Anyway, from that point, we went into the labs and we started testing. And from those tests, it was a very scientific way of training, which was very different to the way that previous ultra endurance cyclists had done it, where it's hours and hours and hours, and you just ride as long as you can and then sleep a little. Ours was a much more scientific approach about building a stronger engine, a stronger base, riding faster, sleeping longer, and having a more sustainable way of doing things. And I remember going into those interval sessions the first time round, and I thought it was going to be a piece of cake, because all these ultra endurance riders were doing 6, 7, 8 hour rides in a day to build their endurance capacity. And I'd been given this 1 hour long session in the gym, and it was 6 repetitions of 5 minutes each with 3 minutes break in between. I was like, this is simple. It's a piece of cake. I'll go down to the cafe afterwards. It'll be easy. Go meet with some friends. And it wasn't at all. Each interval was such high intensity for me. The power output, I'd never cycled like that before. And I remember my heart beating like out of my chest and the sweat dripping off my face. And when your legs are pushing so hard, it was like they were stung by nettles all over it. And each interval that passed just felt longer and longer and harder and harder. And each break feels shorter. You don't recover enough. Until the 4th interval out of 6, I couldn't hit the target for long enough. By the 5th interval, I was furious. I was certain that the physiologist had made a mistake. There was no way that I could do this. And by the 6th interval, I had nothing left. And I thought, right, I'll prove it to them. I'll take the data from this training session and show the scientists and get them to sort it out. So I went back to the physiologist and I was like, look, you've made a mistake here. Clearly, when you go away and do the maths and come back with something I can do, I'll knock it out the park. You've got the problem here, not me. And the physiologist very calmly, as scientists do tend to be. They don't react with emotions, which I wish I had still. Just turned around and said, look, from the tests, I can prove that your body has the capacity to do that, but what you've hit is a mental obstacle. And you've got to find a way through that. And that's when I started working with the psychologist on the team. But the first thing the psychologist asked me was, when you couldn't hit those targets, what did you do? And this was something that was just innately within me. And maybe it's just that stubbornness, that sheer like bullheaded mentality of I will prove to somebody that I can do this. My first reaction was that I would continue to the end. If it buried me, I would get to the end of that session. I'd prove somebody else wrong. And he said, the fact that you didn't give up, that tells me that I know you're going to break this record. And so there's something in there before I even started the training that got me through it. But then we built a lot of psychology into it that wasn't just applicable to the training, it was mostly applicable to the world record attempt itself. And it's about getting through those difficult situations and defining who you want to be.
So there was something in you already that they picked up.
Yeah, I think so. I've spoken in some psychology lectures at the university as well, kind of as a case study. And I've been lucky to be involved in lectures where the lecturers have been talking about how trauma creates talent and how you get these athletes. So in England, we didn't really have a very successful tennis champion. And then Andy Murray came along, who, when he was young, he was involved in the Dunblane massacre. And at that time, his parents got divorced and his brother left, and he found himself in tennis. And when you have had to dig through trauma, you've gone to a greater depth than other people. When you come to a competition, if you're both equally as talented, it's who can dig the deepest. And you see that with Tiger Woods. You see it with the Williams sisters. There's a lot of that. And I think that I'm never going to be an advocate of people going through mental health difficulties, but I think that there was a level of, I've gone through harder than this in my life. Like I dug to some pretty dark places when I was going through the depression and anxiety. And when you've done something difficult, you know within yourself that you can go through something difficult again. And so maybe there's an element of that. Yeah, having a difficulty in your background, it can almost be an opportunity.
I was fascinated by the group that you took out on the world record attempt, and this guy Jem really stuck in my mind.
Jem's an absolute hero. Yeah,
it was like a reality check. You know, whatever fantasies you have, he brings the kind of gritty truth in your face all of the time, and he's a logistical expert. We all need a Jem in our lives.
Yes, we do. Yeah, Jem was brilliant. I think the people that you have surrounding you are really important. The scientists back home were always number crunching, knowing what was best for me, kind of tactically, strategically. The people that we had out on the road were so important for their personalities and their mindsets as much as their ability. You could have all the best technology and the best science and the best psychology in the world, I guess. But when it really comes down to those difficult moments, like those crisis points, for me, I think it's the human aspects that get you through. It's the humanity, it's the relationships, it's the people around you. And so there was a day, I think it was day 13 on the record attempt, when we had to go through Moscow. It was the most dangerous day of the record, really, because Moscow is the most congested city in the world, 16 million people on these swirling 4-lane motorways and congested city streets in the middle. So to get across this metropolis in the same time, the team had to go around in the motorhome and I had to go through the middle, which is not a problem in itself. But if anything went wrong, I'm alone and nobody can reach me. So, and it was a risk the team didn't want to take, because that whole morning I've been cycling, just feeling empty, riding like without focus, without a care, without direction. And they tried everything that they could for 12 hours, like caffeine tablets, letting me sleep, keeping me up, trying to energize me, energy drinks, different foods, anything they could do, and it didn't work. And on the last break of the day before we got to Moscow, Jem took me to one side in a service station. He put his arm around me and he said, look, Leigh, we've tried everything this morning and nothing's worked. You've got a team behind you who will do anything here, but you're going to have to tell us what it is you need us to do. You know, you've got a team who will do anything to get you to what you want, but you've just got to let us know what it is. And I think in that moment, a lot of things clicked. I think I suddenly realized that for that whole day, for 12 hours, I've been riding a bike going, I'm the one in the saddle. I'm the one pushing the pedals. I'm the one who's funded this. I'm the one who's trained for this. It's me, me, me. And in that moment, I realized, actually, I've got a team here. It's not just me crossing this continent. Those guys will do anything. I've also got the scientists at home number crunching. Also, I've got the belief of the people who know me. People were watching it on social media every day. And there was an element of hope and belief that my friends and family had put in it. And I think in that moment, I suddenly picked up and I went and I was like, Jem, actually, I've got this. And I realized that everything that we do impacts the people around us. It's not just about these selfish pursuits. It's actually something bigger. And then he explained that he saw the world record as a slice, as a block of cheese, you know, that Swiss cheese with the holes in it. And he said that that was all in slices. And his job as the road operations manager was to just make sure those slices of cheese lined up so he could drive the motorhome through. And it made me realize that I'd thought for so long that I was the important one. You know, I'm breaking the record, I'm riding the bike, I financed it. But actually, I was just a slice of cheese. And actually, we all are, you know, in every family, in every friendship group, in every sports team, in every organization, doesn't matter if you're the top of the chain or the bottom, you're an important slice of cheese that just needs to line up. We're all equally important. And I thought that that was brilliant. It was such a good lesson to learn.
And I think I'm going to hand over to the big cheese, Alice, at this point.
Not the
And Alice,
Nice
the challenge for you is to bring in the kickboxing as well, because Alice is
I'm not sure we have time for the kickboxing. No, because I'm a kickboxer, Leigh, so my sport is very different.
Right, that's fascinating.
Very, obviously very interactive rather than me by myself doing an endurance event. I think that's why I've been able to stick to it. I think if I was alone doing something, I would probably go to some very strange, probably dark places. What if you were pushing yourself physically? I mean, you must have gone to some strange places mentally.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you found a different side to sport as well. I think for me, there's two sides to cycling, and I'm very lucky to get them both, where one side is very similar to what I imagine kickboxing would be like. You're in the moment. If your eyes off the game, you're getting punched in the face, or like something's coming your way that's not nice.
That's correct.
And so it's almost that moment of flow. I don't know if you find that, like, there's no time for contemplation or self-awareness, or maybe some self-awareness, but yeah, for contemplating psychological theories, or, you know, how did I get to this point in my life? You might question that afterwards.
Yeah.
And for me, that's mountain biking. I love it. I've just got back into it. That's what got me into cycling when I was a kid. That freedom in the outdoors, avoiding the trees, the rocks, the roots, the climb, the descent, like every moment. If you're not thinking about how you're handling that bike and your relationship with the world around you, you're going to hit a tree or you're going to be off. Like, it's total flow. And I love that. Hours disappear in seconds. But on the bike, on the road, it is very different. And on those ultra endurance events, riding 14, 15, 16 hours a day, there was some real parallels to the depression that I'd gone through years before, actually. That feeling of questioning why you're doing this. Like, you might not notice it in the first day or two, but then after a week, 2 weeks, you're like, I'm the only one out here. Nobody cares. Nobody's watching this. What's the point of doing this anyway? The feeling of, nobody else understands, that definitely went through my mind. So you go through a whole load of emotions, and you kind of see through preparation, you're building up to being the best version of yourself you can be. And then through an attempt like that, you see this gradual unraveling of that person until, for me, I kind of got to the crux of it all, I think. So gone through all kinds of situations of falling off the bike, having difficult times, mechanicals. And then on the day that I went into Russia, I think I had my biggest psychological low, which for all of the record up till that point, it was about day 12, I think. I thought that I had these expectations in my mind that I was going to achieve something beyond what even the scientists thought I could do. We'd had a best case scenario of 16 days and a worst case of 20. And I'd, in my mind, made up that actually I was going to do it in 14. And I was going to surprise the scientists. I was going to surprise everyone. Wouldn't it be amazing? The first person to cross the continent in 2 weeks was going to be headlines. And I'd just kind of blanked myself from the data that was coming out every day. I hadn't believed it. And in my mind, I guess I thought I had 10 countries to cross. And when we got into Russia, that was country number 10. So only 10% left to go. Turns out Russia's massive. Like, you can't just cross that in a day. And so I had this sudden reality check that actually I still had 25% left to go. And I was so far off that expectation. I didn't speak to the team all morning. Over breakfast, I grabbed the bike and I left the team and just said one thing. I said, I'm never going to achieve anything that impresses me. And when you're alone on the bike, you've got a lot of time to think. I generally would think about the last thing that I'd said to the team or the team had said to me. That sort of sticks in your mind. And that morning I was like, where has that come from? That's not about this attempt. That's something more. And like, I started digging back through, a lot of the stuff that I've been through and realizing that I'd always been trying to impress people and do this stupid stuff and what was actually for. And I stopped the team and I told them to turn off the engine in the motorhome and get out. I wanted to have a word with them. And I'm pretty sure they all thought I was going to quit them. And just at the side of the road in Russia, I started to just explain that I'd realized I was never going to be there again. This was a once in a lifetime opportunity. And I wanted to stop being analyzed and to be questioned and have these psychological profiles done every 4 hours. I just wanted to be loved. I just wanted to be a human. And I think that is actually, I think it took this huge world record attempt with all these scientists for me to realize that that's the important thing. Like, we get to do these incredible things. And admittedly, if I hadn't pushed everything into it, I might never have understood that and found out these amazing things. And so there's a massive benefit in setting yourself huge challenges and going out and doing it with a team of scientists and understanding all this stuff about yourself, but also enjoying every minute of it and being a human being, realizing that you've got flaws and you have to accept who you are. I think that there's so much, and I think that for me is the beautiful side of the book, the vulnerability in there. It was very difficult to put out into the world in the end. I spent a long time writing it and thinking this would be a great story. I can talk about all of that in these really difficult times, and that's kind of emotionally grabbing. And then as soon as it was released and I couldn't touch it anymore and it was going to the bookshelves, I suddenly went, that's the real me going out there. It's all the vulnerabilities, it's all of the difficult things that I went through, and it's written in a way that it's quite accessible, I think, and people can really feel like they're there with me. And suddenly I was like, that's really intense to put that out there. But I also think it's the beautiful thing. Like, I like to kind of expose the human behind the athlete, because every athlete does have that human side behind them, and they've got to find what works for the human, for the athlete to excel. So I think that was found partly on the world record. So in those times that you asked about, those things that go through your mind, but it was partly found in the writing experience as well.
Ajay, I mean, when you listen to Leigh talking about that, I mean, does it make you think about like embarking on a therapy journey and how long that can take, or just any version of trying to kind of self-improve or get over things, or
There's so many parallels, aren't there? I was thinking, I was cycling here to this office and I had these various musings thinking, first of all, I thought Leigh is a psychic astronaut. I came up with this new term because he's gone to places in outer space and which we're never going to go to. The air's too thin, it's too dangerous, but he's brought some experiences back and he can relay them to us. And he's also explored the mind-body connection in a way we can't really experience. So there's lots of interesting, like fascinating material from him. And listening to him, it's a real pleasure. I thought there are a number of parallels. Therapy, you don't know where it's going to lead when you start off. You don't know what the destination is going to be. Like Jem, you're there for the cake. You just have to get into what's there. Like therapy, there's no secret sauce in therapy. You can have this type of therapy or that type of therapy. but there are no shortcuts. There's a lot of work behind the scenes. There's labor, there's graft, there's blood, sweat, tears, there's time, there's money. Thirdly, I think Leigh's biggest experience is not the time, it's his inner experience of what that journey meant to him, which he carries in his bones and he'll carry all his life. And I think that's like therapy. Therapy, there are no medals or trophies, really. It's an inner experience. So I think there are lots, and therapy also takes a lot of time. It can go on for a long, long time, much longer than people originally think. A bit like your journey, because you thought it was going to be a short one, where you were going to just get a couple of panniers and cycle off into the distance and get the record. And it was like, not so fast, Leigh. Actually, it's changed your whole life, and it took up years of your life. So I think there are lots of really interesting connections. The sixth one is they're both about suffering. They're different forms of being with your suffering, because they're conscious ways of being with difficulties in search of growth or self-knowledge. And maybe seventh, you find out about yourself, because if you haven't trained and you do an endurance event, after 10 minutes or after an hour or after 5 hours, you're going to find out, the wheels come off. You can't lie, you can't hide, the truth comes out. It's the same with therapy. After a while, the problems come up in the consulting room. They're there right in front of you. You can't run away from them. I'll stop there.
Thank you. No, it's so interesting. Thank you both. Sorry, did you want to respond, Leigh? You're very welcome to. But I'm aware that I've kept you both for longer than I said I would.
Oh, I just want to say thank you. That was absolutely beautiful. And it's so nice to see. For me, the greatest thing that I could ask for coming out from that book would be that it helps people. And it's a journey. It is a cycling journey, but I really believe it's a reflection of life. So yeah, like you said, the Race of Truth, the name comes from what we call the individual time trial in cycling, which is basically you do all your preparation and then it's just you against the road. There's a clock that times you, and the finishing lap time is all that you've got. That's you put it all out on the road, and the finishing time is what you've worked towards. And that's kind of life. It's all the stuff you go through in the background, and it's what you can create, but also it is that journey as well. I'm so happy about those points that you're able to make and those parallels. Like for me, that's all I wanted the book to do and more. So thank you very much. I'm going to rewatch that bit of the video actually to pick that up.
There's something also kind of your ego breaks down. You lose your ego after a point. You have all these plans, as you say, a bit like in therapy. But we don't know ourselves. Your ego breaks down, and then you have a different experience, which is much richer or bigger, more kind of, I don't know if it was spiritual or transcendent or sublime or beautiful, but it was a very rich, broad experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much, both. It's been a real pleasure to speak to you, and I'll get in touch with all the details and everything. Cool.
Thanks so much, Alice. That's great.
Yeah, buy the book. Thank you.